Good evening and welcome to our special coverage of the Korea-EU joint press conference. President EU정상, who is on a European tour tied to the G7 summit, is in Brussels for a series of high-level meetings with European leaders as part of Seoul's renewed push to strengthen ties with Europe following his first year in office. A joint press conference with President Lee and the EU leadership is expected to begin shortly. While we wait for that to happen, we are joined by Professor Christophe Godin. Welcome.
Good evening. Always a pleasure.
Good evening. Professor Godin, how significant, to start with, is this meeting between President Lee and the EU, European Council President and European Commission President all at the same time? How significant is this meeting to begin with?
Very much so, because Korea and Europe are both desperately looking for partners. So both need somehow to try to find a way to, because the US is not the reliable partner they used to be, so both are looking for steady partnerships. And so, of course, in these uncharted waters we are forced to navigate, this meeting is highly significant.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this. Then how important is this meeting that President Lee is trying to reach Europe on a diplomatic front, moving beyond Korea's traditional focus on, the US and Northeast Asia?
Well, first, what is interesting here is that President Lee is trying to reach out to the European Commission directly, because the EU itself is quite divided between populist governments, like in Italy, liberal governments, like in France and in Germany. And on top of it, both largest powers in Europe, France and Germany, for now, in neither of these countries there is a steady majority in parliament. So what President Lee is trying to do is to reach out directly to the European Commission. So he's trying to think big, because, to answer your question more directly, as Korea is looking for a partner to balance their former partnership with America, they need a partner that could be just as large. And this role, France or Germany alone cannot fulfill. So that's why I think Korea, under the Lee administration, is turning to the European Commission as a whole.
Well, then that all ties into President EU정상's so-called pragmatic diplomacy. Now, how might that approach be reflected in today's discussions with Antonio Costa and also Ursula von der Leyen?
In fact, pragmatic diplomacy, I think, mostly means that President Lee is trying to put back some normalcy into international relations.
I see.
With Trump's tariffs, with the invasion of Ukraine, with the forthcoming threats of China on Taiwan. For a middle power like Korea, what Korea needs now is normalcy, is stability, especially because the Korean economy relies heavily on exports.
Right.
So what I expect President Lee to try to achieve, so with, for instance, Ursula von der Leyen, is probably to achieve renewed commercial partnerships in the first place, and in the bigger picture, a steady partner to balance the situation with America.
Well, it looks like now that President Lee managed to bring normalcy back here in the country after what we went through in 2024, the whole botched martial law order and everything. Now it looks like he's about to bring normalcy on the diplomatic front, reaching out to Europe.
Definitely so. As you remember, it was even his campaign slogan.
Right.
Normalization, the whole thing about getting back to Chongkwade, the Blue House.
Right.
You're right, he's trying to achieve the same kind of normalization domestically in Korea and internationally. And the problem with Korea is that being stuck between China and Japan, unfortunately, you cannot rely on your own forces solely to ensure your own defense. So Korea needs partners. And you're right, pragmatic here means, in the first place, normal, means quiet. So, of course, what it means is that in this context, the Lee administration cannot go for bombastic declarations. You need to keep a low profile, because the more you say, the more you expose yourself in this kind of context.
That is an interesting point. Then what kind of diplomatic messages do you think President Lee may be hoping to send through at today's discussions?
Mostly, I think that Korea now is able to negotiate their own deals without having to refer to America. So in this context, any new deal, for instance, like a commercial deal, will be progress. If on top of it, as can be expected, because Korea has a lot to offer to Europe in terms of technology, because Europe needs semiconductors.
Right.
Europe does not produce them. Bad for us. And so Korea has a lot to offer to Europe in this context. And on the other hand, what Europe can offer to Korea, I think, first and foremost, it is diplomatic support. And second, also, I think, more broadly, you need to keep in mind that France is a member of the Security Council at the EU. So the support that Korea cannot expect from the Trump administration, Korea can get it from France. So here, what I think is that, long story short, Korea has to offer technology, Europe has to offer diplomacy. So it can be a win-win relationship here.
Well, it's true that EU has been placing greater emphasis on technology, sovereignty, as well as supply chain security. Now, Professor Goreng, then tell us more about what South Korea can really offer and what opportunities are there for South Korea to take part and participate.
So, first and foremost, Korea will need new clients to export their semiconductors. Because the Korean industry is not primarily producing for the Korean domestic market. So if the situation is very uncertain in America, because for the moment, the Lee administration has been able to navigate quite successfully with Trump's tariffs, but for how long we cannot tell. We don't know if these tariffs are here to stay. If they go, well, good for Korea. But what if they don't? What if Trump finds a new way to force tariffs, and who knows for how much, on the Korean economy? So Korea needs definitely new partners. And the thing is that, long story short, China is always difficult to navigate for the political reasons you know. America is not as reliable as they used to be. So then, who's left?
The EU. So when it comes to reliability and unpredictability.
Definitely, and on top of it, Korea enjoys a very positive image in Europe. Because Europe today is close to America, the largest foreign market out of Asia to export Korean commercial goods like K-pop, K-drama, even, for instance, Korean language classes are highly popular in Europe. So when it comes to these sectors of the Korean economy that are booming, Europe offers a huge customer base, and that is politically harmless, with none of the uncertainties attached to America. What Europe can expect from Korea, first and foremost, is technology. Because the expertise Korea has, we don't have it. We simply don't. Because of very inaccurate political choices, but unfortunately it's too late. It's too late for us, and if Korea can help us out, well, so let it be. And second, more largely, you need to keep in mind that there are very few actual democracies in Asia. There's Taiwan, there's Korea, there's Japan. And that's about it for the most part. And so if Europe wants to strengthen ties with other democracies in East Asia, there are not plenty of options. And that's also the reason why, over the last months, despite Mr. Kaishi being a conservative leader and Mr. Lee being a liberal, you could see Korea and Japan strengthening ties, trying to put all of historical disputes under the rug, etc. But why is it so? Because they are running out of options. In Asia, the only reliable partner that Korea is having now is Japan. And so if Europe tries not to compromise with dictatorships like Russia and China, Korea is the way to go. Plus, on top of it, Korea is much more, how should I put it, open to the world than Japan is. More Koreans and Japanese learn foreign languages. Koreans, young Koreans, are in general very curious of the West. And so for this reason, you can definitely expect Europe to find a more welcoming customer base in Korea than anywhere else in Asia.
Well, I can't say Koreans are more open and more adventurous.
Yes, and curious. Look, something that always strikes me is that us in Europe, for instance, in my home country, the languages we learn in the first place, it's Spanish, it's English, it's Italian. The languages of our neighbors, the language all young Koreans want to learn, it's English. It is not Chinese or Japanese. So there's obviously here a connection to be found with Europe.
Well, it's clear that Europe is looking to rely on South Korea on technological front, but Europe is also looking to find entrusted partners amid a huge geopolitical uncertainty. Where does South Korea fit in this picture?
Well,
when it comes to security?
Two things. First, when you mentioned last year's tragic events with the martial law and so on, if you try to look at the bigger picture, Korean democracy during this crisis proved how solid it was. What is interesting is that Korean democracy proved its strength, its solidity. So first, Korea is a stable democracy. There are very few in this part of the world. And also, Korea, contrary to Japan, is a military power. Korea is spending about 3 to 4% of their GDP for basically the army in military expenditures. Korea produces weapons, quite a lot, that Europe may need in a close future because of the situation in Russia. So these two aspects, first, a steady democracy in East Asia, and second, a military power, this combination in Asia can be found nowhere but in Korea.
Well, then you mentioned the growing uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, and around the world, what does this summit tell us about the strategic value between South Korea and the European Union at the moment?
Well, first, as the Brits like to put it, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What matters first about this summit is that it exists. And it is very interesting to remark that a few years ago, at these G7 summits, Europe tried to invite Russia, for instance. Now, Russia is out of the picture. And what is very interesting is that in France or in Germany, there were very few hesitations about what foreign power to invite. Korea came on the table right away. And this choice was anything but controversial. So the first thing that I think to be interesting here is that this summit is taking place. It is not controversial at all, while European societies
are questioning.
No, and European countries are just as polarized as America or Korea. And despite all this choice has been nothing but controversial. Korea is consensual in Europe. And populist governments like in Italy, liberal governments like in France or in Germany, they all went all for it directly. without any controversy, which is very rare in Europe,
Right.
as the EU is very divided. As you know.
Right. Considering that how divided EU is, it's great to hear that South Korea is welcome at to the G7 summit, and the fact that the summit between South Korea and also the EU leadership is taking place is just crucial at the moment. Then, Professor Goreng, are you expecting any words or specific agreements to come out of this joint press conference?
It's hard to tell. Probably, if there is something to be announced, first it will be commercial deals, technological cooperation. For anything military, it will be quite a leap to take. No. Plus, on top of it, you need to keep in mind that at this G7 summit, there's America too, as President Trump is in France too. And of course, in this context, it is difficult to go for spectacular announcements. The fact that this press conference is happening so in France, with Korea, and with the EU as a whole claiming their will to cooperate with Korea in itself is the great news. What will be interesting, I think, for us, what we need to pay close attention to is whether these announcements will be numbered or not. Will they come with practical plans, with investments, with trade deals, or will they remain philosophical and general? Truth is always in numbers in politics.
That is true. Then I know you just mentioned that we could expect some economic cooperation, tighter economic cooperation between Korea and the EU. Then, Professor Goreng, I do have to ask again, what would be the bottom line expectation that you would have from this summit?
Unfortunately, I think that President Lee, for the moment, because of his pragmatic approach, cannot go too far. He cannot go too far because the more he says, the more he exposes himself. If you look at it, after this 1 year of presidency, he's been doing a great job of keeping the country together. But how do you do so in a polarized society? It is precisely by not taking too harsh stances.
Well, we just had a sneak peek of the joint statement between the leaders of South Korea and the EU. Apparently, they managed to come to a collective voice on North Korea's denuclearization. And that's not a surprise, Professor Goreng, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. And it is no surprise either that, unfortunately, I don't think it is to take us very far.
Really?
No, because for the regime in Pyongyang, the nuclear weapon means survival. So unfortunately, in any foreseeable future, they are not to give up on it. What is interesting is that in the last days, for instance, if you think of senior members of the Trump administration, Pete Hegseth, for instance, seemed to take a very soft stance of North Korea, taking this nuclearization of the Korean peninsula for granted. What is interesting about this statement is that Europe seems to be going the exact opposite way. We know that North Korea is not to give up on their nuclear weapons in any foreseeable future, but still a principle needs to be stated that denuclearization, also not possible here and now, needs to remain the objective we are to try to achieve. Even if it's not realistic now, we cannot agree with all. If you don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons, why North Korea?
You cannot say that.
Yeah.
Well, we are still waiting for the joint press conference to happen. Professor Goreng, I do have to mention this is the first time in 8 years that a South Korean president is in Brussels. Do give us a recap of the significance of this trip itself.
Definitely so. What is interesting is that the previous administration the UN administration ignored Europe for the most part.
Oh, you say so?
Oh, definitely so. The focus was on America.
In the US.
President Jun visited America quite a few times.
Right.
Trump has been a source of inspiration for conservatives all over the world, but here particularly in Asia. And the very fact that President Lee tries to go to Europe with a very clear agenda that everybody is aware of in itself is significant. In my opinion, whatever is going to be announced, of course it will be interesting, but the big news is, in the first place, that this summit is taking place.
The fact that it is happening in Brussels with both the European Council President and European Commission President at the same time, that does carry quite a huge significance. Now, Professor Goreng, then what about how Europe, how the administration is shifting its focus to Europe? Why now?
Why now? Good question, actually. I think that because it is a big leap to take, and it is not something that could have been done in the first months of his administration.
Exactly.
Yeah, when Korea was basically licking their wounds. During the first months of his administration, what the Lee administration tried to achieve, first and foremost, it was to find allies all over the world for Trump's tariffs to be lifted as much as possible. So at the time, this pragmatic approach was defensive. Now it's getting constructive, hence in Europe. Honestly, I couldn't think of any major partner Korea could rely on. There are other powers, like for instance Brazil, that Korea tries to strengthen ties with. But Brazil, Mexico, no matter how interesting, they do not carry the same symbolic, economic, cultural weight as Europe in terms of population, in terms of GDP, in terms of technology, in terms of military importance. The Lee administration has tried to strengthen ties with Japan, with Brazil, with plenty of partners, or with Africa, with this summit that took place last week. But still, Europe is geopolitically more important than all of those.
Well, you briefly mentioned how President Lee won't expose himself too much, right? Now, he will have to apply his pragmatic diplomacy during his Europe, though. To what extent do you think he will have to, lay out his pragmatic approach?
I think he's gone quite far already, because, I mean, going to Europe, trying to meet up with Ms. von der Leyen directly, as opposed to visiting Paris, Berlin, Rome, etc. And making this move, because everybody in Korea understands that EU, in this case, means mostly not America. So he's exposed himself quite a lot already, and I think it is difficult to go any further.
Ah, okay. You meant exposure of himself on
or Korea.
I see.
As a middle power, Korea cannot expose themselves too much.
I see. Then what about the Ukraine crisis? I mean, the Middle East tensions have, kind of overshadowed the crisis in Ukraine. Do you think the EU leaders and EU will bring up Ukraine conflict here?
It's difficult to say because Europe is very divided.
Right, when it comes to Ukraine.
What I can tell you is that, for instance, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, would like to strengthen the European support to Ukraine.
Right.
But Germany is no military power anymore, and he cannot do that. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, is trying to do the same, but the French public opinion is not buying it at all. I mean, realistically, nobody in France wants to die for Ukraine. And so for Ms. von der Leyen, I think that this Ukrainian crisis is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the crisis in Gaza, the crisis in Ukraine, all of those events, first, Korea has nothing realistically to win with stepping in, and therefore it will pollute the message that both Korea and the EU want to send to the world here. And if there is one thing that President Lee is very skilled with, it is avoiding all crises that could undermine his presidency. And it is actually a talent not to get involved in crises where you have nothing to win. For instance, if you look at this crisis in Iran, Korea, like Japan, like China, all of these economies are heavily impacted because oil mostly comes from the Middle East. About 70% of the oil that Korea is consuming goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a crisis that is impacting the South Korean economy.
Exactly.
But honestly, what is it that Korea could do to solve this crisis? Any efforts Korea could try to achieve, they could become counterproductive. They could blow back easily. So in this case, sometimes, and that's a lesson many leaders in the world could meditate probably, it is a fact that sometimes it is a leader's duty to know when to remain silent.
Right. Sometimes it's better to keep your words to yourself and see how the situations unfold. Then Professor Goreng, so President Lee Jae-myung maybe come with a more careful or cautious approach to when it comes to Ukraine crisis. But what about the Middle East tensions? I'm sure the EU leaders and President Lee will be able to manage to put themselves on the same page, right?
Yeah, the problem, well, if you think, for instance, of the situation in my home country in France, France is home to the largest Muslim community in Europe, and France is also home to the largest Jewish community in Europe. So as you can imagine, anytime the French diplomacy is trying to step in this crisis, they're working on eggshells. And so in Europe, the situation in Gaza is meeting a lot of indignation, to put it mildly. But at the same time, what is it that Europe can do realistically without a military intervention? Because when it comes to international relations, in the end, you know that international relations, as I like to teach my students at universities, are always in a state of anarchy, because there is no world government to regulate these international relations. So in the case of Korea, what is interesting in the case of Korea is that Korea is not involved with Israel.
Right.
It's not involved with any major Middle Eastern power. So Korea could serve as a go-between between parties to initiate negotiations. Korea, in this case, is not involved in this crisis as heavily as France, Germany, or the UK, that is not in the EU, but that, I mean, in a way, all major European powers, because they're home to many immigrant communities, they're forced to take a very careful approach. Korea, not really. And it's not the first time that Korea has served as a go-between to address international crises. Korea even has developed a very interesting know-how over the last decades, because Korea, having the northern neighbor, you know, Korean diplomacy has become very skilled with negotiating with a partner that doesn't want to negotiate. So no, that's actually a lead to explore. When it comes to all of these major conflicts in Ukraine, in Gaza, maybe tomorrow in Taiwan, Korea can serve as a go-between. President Lee, for instance, hasn't gone for the very, how should I put it, the very passionate statements that Ms. Takaishi made about Taiwan. Nothing such has happened in Korean diplomacy. The South Korean diplomacy is very, very careful about Taiwan. We haven't read any major statement.
Right. Well, you mentioned that Europe is looking to secure some entrusted partners when it comes to technology. I'm sure that you mentioned South Korea has a lot to offer, chips, advanced technology, even AI.
AI.
Right.
AI.
How advanced is EU, would you say, so far when it comes to artificial intelligence?
The answer is very simple, not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all. Korea has been able to develop semiconductors, AI, but even better, Korea has been able to develop national champions. Not only Samsung, but Naver, but KakaoTalk, and all of the others. It's very interesting to see that America has Google, Korea has Naver. What does the EU have? As a European, I use Google. America has WhatsApp. Korea has Kakao. Japan uses Line. Americans have never been able to develop digital technology of their own. So in fact, what can Korea offer to Europe in this department? The short answer is everything. Everything. We've got technology in Europe, but for instance, we've got fast speed trains, we've got pharmaceutical industries.
Right.
But we do not have any of this. There is no European equivalent of Samsung. There is simply none, even in Germany.
Then I'm sure there's a huge room for Korean firms to,
that's obvious, because on top of it, Europeans, when trading with Korea, do not fear political interference the way you could. It is no secret that all of these major American firms, like say Google, for instance, they work with the American government. Or it is very obvious that if you're purchasing Chinese technology, the Chinese government is to have a say. I do not think that the danger for, say, espionage or even political interference with Korea is comparable. So, and it is what Europe is looking for in Korea. Technology without interference.
Well, he is in Brussels, which is his first leg of the 10-day European tour. And he spent the first day meeting with Korean people living in Brussels. And he also met with Belgian Prime Minister. How did you read the first day in Europe?
Well, first, you've got Koreans everywhere. So you can always, no, that's true. It's something very remarkable that you've got Korean communities everywhere in Europe, and they're very active, much more so than many other countries. And so here, the Lee administration can rely on these Korean nationals, first. And second, from what I read, it's very interesting to see that the Korean government considered all of these expatriates to be Korean citizens that are to keep serving their country no matter what, all over the world, from where they are. Korea has a huge card to play, because when you've got all of these Korean students who go study overseas, of course, it can be dangerous because there is always a risk of brain drain. But all of these communities of young Koreans, active leaders that are eager to serve their country, it is a force you can capitalize upon, definitely.
Right. Every time President Lee embarks on an overseas tour, he always starts with a meeting with Korean residents living there, wherever that is. What about a meeting with Belgium Prime Minister? What is the significance of that meeting, the summit?
Oh, I think it was courtesy. It was courtesy because Belgium is no major power. And on top of it, as Belgium is a very federal country, in reality, the Prime Minister is not deciding much. Brussels now, is the capital city of Europe more than the capital city of Belgium.
I see. Well, he is in Brussels today, but he will also traveling to, Italy, the Vatican. How would you expect the rest of his trip to turn out?
What will be interesting will be to see how he manages to navigate Europe political differences. Now you've got few leaders that are welcome in Giorgia Meloni's Italy, Emmanuel Macron's France, and Friedrich Merz's Germany, and even at the Vatican. Also, because if you think of the Catholic Church, you know that Korea will be hosting the largest event of the Catholic Church. So the World Days of the Youth next year, they are to take place in Korea, and the Vatican too is counting a lot on Korea to expand their influence in Asia. It's very, very interesting because I couldn't think of many leaders that will be welcome all over Europe. If you think of the populist government of Miss Meloni, of all of these liberal governments that agree on nothing, Korea is welcome everywhere. That in itself. For instance, when Ms. Takaishi visited France a few months ago, she wouldn't go for a whole European tour.
Oh, really?
No. She visited, to my recollection, a couple of countries, but and announcements. There was nothing major. For the most part, France and Japan mentioned that they wanted to keep trading, they wanted peace, and period. Here, President Lee is staying for 10 days. You can expect some substantial deals to be signed eventually. And also, Europe is counting on Korean technology much more than Japan's, because Korea is more advanced than Japan in terms of AI, in terms of semiconductors, chips basically, which is what Europe needs at the time.
Welcome everyone. The 11th summit between the European Union and the Republic of Korea just ended a few minutes ago. I have the pleasure to welcome on stage Antonio Costa, President of the European Council, Madame Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Lee Jae-myung, the President of the Republic of Korea. President Costa, you have the floor.
Mr. President, dear Ursula, dear President Lee, let me thank you for traveling to Brussels to participate in the 11th summit between the European Union and the Republic of Korea. I hope you will agree that our successful meetings made it worth the long journey. Today, during our summit, we advanced the strategic partnership between the European Union and the Republic of Korea even further, strengthening our cooperation across the border and further contributing to prosperity and security of our citizens. The strongest partnership are built not only by institutions, but by people. And this summit takes place at a moment when our peoples in ties in education, culture, and innovation are closer than ever. For us, the European Union-Korea relationship is a long-term commitment, and today is a demonstration of how our partnership is delivering. The European Union and the Republic of Korea are trusted strategic partners and friends, sharing the same values and the commitment to the rule of law, democracy, multilateralism, and the rules-based economic order. We are like-minded partners joined in our belief that international cooperation, stability and predictability, together with open, free and rules-based order, remain the best way to reinforce our common security and prosperity. We don't have to look too far to find an example of this. The European Union-Korea Free Trade Agreement remains one of the European Union's most successful trade agreements. Since its entry into force in 2011, bilateral trade has more than doubled in value and has delivered substantial growth in investment flows for the benefit of both sides, supporting high-quality jobs and enhancing supply chain resilience. The digital trade agreement you signed today is a landmark achievement that will connect further the digital economies of the European Union and Korea, foster innovation-driven growth, and set high standards digital trade rules. Today, we also committed to negotiating a new security of information agreement in view of further underpinning our security and defense partnership, paving the way for even stronger cooperation between the European Union and the Republic of Korea in this domain. We have also agreed to launch a new competitiveness partnership supported by a high-level economic dialogue to deepen our cooperation on economic security, trade, industrial policy, and artificial intelligence. Today, we also discussed our joint support for preserving a global order based on international law and effective modern multilateralism. We agreed to work together to strengthen the United Nations, including through the UN80 initiative, in order to deliver a more effective, cost-efficient, and responsive United Nations organizations that is fit for purpose. Last but not least, we discussed regional and global developments, including the situations in Korean Peninsula, the Indo-Pacific region, the Middle East, and Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. I believe we agree that we cannot allow any state to use military aggression to threaten our peace, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of any country. Otherwise, the global order would collapse into chaos. Therefore, the European Union strongly appreciates the Republic of Korea's cooperation and its assistance to Ukraine. To conclude, dear President Lee, dear Ursula, today's summit was extremely successful in expanding our cooperation. And allow me to, on behalf of the 27 member states, to congratulate the Commission for your great work and what to deliver in this summit. It will be remembered as another important milestone in the strengthening and deepening of our strategic partnership. I'm looking forward to remaining in close contact with you on many of the important issues we discussed today. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Yes, thank you very much, dear President Lee. It is my honor, together with my friend Antonio, to welcome you to Brussels for the 11th EU-Korean Summit. Europe and the Republic of Korea share a decades-old bond, and that bond is growing stronger on all levels. For example, today, young Europeans are filling entire arenas to see BTS and Blackpink perform. But there are also millions of Koreans that watch their compatriots playing for European football clubs. And this mutual appreciation is also manifestly clear in our political and economic partnership. Indeed, 15 years ago, our predecessors met here in Brussels The free trade agreement they signed has more than doubled our trade, and the strategic partnership they concluded has expanded our cooperation. So today we work on security, on crisis management, maritime cooperation, science, technology, innovation, trade, and much, much more. And our security is more interconnected than ever. The fact that North Korean soldiers are fighting alongside Russian soldiers in Ukraine serves as a strong reminder of this. From day one on, Korea has condemned Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, and your country has given vital support to our Ukrainian friends in their fight for liberation. For this, we are very, very thankful. Korea was among the first Indo-Pacific partners with whom we concluded a security and defense partnership agreement, and it has brought strong momentum to our cooperation. Today, we decided to start negotiations on a security of information agreement. These are just some of the many reasons why I say with confidence that Korea is one of Europe's closest partners in the Indo-Pacific region and on the global stage. And I'm deeply convinced that the best is yet to come. Because in today's uncertain world, stable and trusted partnerships like ours are more precious than ever. So today we have taken ambitious steps to advance our relationship even further. First, on trade, we will build on our successful partnership with a digital trade agreement. It will consolidate our trade cooperation in the digital sphere. It will ensure safe and reliable data flow. It will boost e-commerce, and it will harmonize our consumer protection standards. We also decided to deepen cooperation on economic security. This will help us to strengthen our resilience against external shocks and tackle strategic vulnerabilities. We will notably work together in secure access to critical raw materials and protect our sensitive technologies. Second, we launched a new competitiveness partnership. This will strengthen our industrial and technological edge. It will attract investment, and it will accelerate the clean and digital transitions on both sides. To drive this agenda forward, we will establish a high-level economic dialogue. This will bring together our work on trade, on investment, on economic security, and on industrial policy. So these efforts reinforce one another and deliver tangible results and prosperity for our people and our businesses. The third point I want to mention is that we want to expand our cooperation on clean energy production. This is not only a climate imperative, it is a strategic one. We see strong potential in the areas of hydrogen and offshore wind, and there's great potential to develop business partnerships in the nuclear energy space, including small modular reactors. We discussed that intensively today. This will help strengthen our energy security at a critical time and enhance our competitiveness over the long term. Here, too, I welcome that we launch a dedicated high-level energy dialogue. And finally, let me turn to the crown jewel that is research and innovation. Europe and Korea are working together to shape the technologies of tomorrow. On AI, we are already cooperating very closely on safety, on governance, on trusted innovation. And as a global leader on semiconductors, Korea is a key partner for the European Union. Building on these strengths, we will deepen our cooperation across research and innovation and across the AI stack. Moreover, last year, Korea joined Horizon Europe. We were very happy about that. It's the world's largest and most renowned research and innovation program, and our cooperation has been a great success so far. So today we discussed how to continue this cooperation in the next programming period that starts in 2028. To conclude, dear President Lee, dear Antonio, our 11th EU-Korea summit has been a resounding success. Now we must get to work and ensure that all our promises that we have given to each other in new areas of cooperation deliver the right results for our people and our businesses. Thank you very much.
President Lee, you have the floor.
It is deeply meaningful that my first visit to Europe as president begins here in Brussels, the heart of the European Union. Thankfully, following my inauguration last year, President Costa and the European Council and President Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission graciously invited me to visit the European Union, and I am very happy to accept their invitation this time, and I extend my sincere gratitude for the warm hospitality to me and my delegation. Since establishing diplomatic relations in 1963, the Republic of Korea and the European Union have built a close and enduring partnership. Together, we have established a strong institutional framework across the political, economic, and security domains through such agreements as Framework Agreement, the FTA, the Agreement on Participation of Crisis Management. Over the years, we have also deepened our mutual trust as strategic partners. More recently, our cooperation has expanded into new areas, and at today's summit, we reaffirmed our shared commitment to further strengthen our partnership and held discussions on practical ways to do that. Allow me to share the key outcomes. First, to deepen our security and defense cooperation, we agreed to launch negotiations on the Security of Information Agreement. As the international environment grows increasingly uncertain, the security of Europe and the Indo-Pacific has become more closely intertwined than ever before. I look forward to the swift conclusion of this agreement, which will enable us to securely share classified information and to actively pursue industrial and research cooperation. Second, we signed the Digital Trade Agreement to further strengthen our economic partnership. The European Union is Korea's third largest trading partner after China and the United States, and our largest source of foreign investment. This agreement will help create a stable and predictable environment for data-driven business and promote the continued growth of digital trade between us. Paperless trade, electronic authentication, and digital signatures will streamline transactions, administrative procedures, enhancing the convenience and benefits enjoyed by the people of both sides. Third, we concluded the agreement on the transfer of passenger name record data for the prevention, detection, investigation, and prosecution of terrorist offenses and serious crimes. In recent years, we have seen a rise in the smuggling of dangerous goods, including narcotics and firearms, by international travelers. To address this challenge, it is essential that customs authorities have timely access to airline passenger data so that the high-risk travelers can be identified and inspected in advance. This agreement establishes the legal basis for our customs authorities to obtain PNR data from EU-registered airlines. We expect it to significantly enhance bilateral cooperation in combating transnational crime, including terrorism and drug trafficking. Fourth, we agreed to continue expanding mutually beneficial cooperation in the industries and technologies that will shape the future. We will strengthen cooperation on carbon neutrality and the energy transition while expanding joint research and exchange in areas such as artificial intelligence and quantum technologies. I'm confident that these efforts will further enhance the innovative capacity and global competitiveness of future industry, both in Korea and the EU. Finally, we agreed to work closely together to promote peace, stability, and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and around the world. During today's talks, I called on the European Union to continue providing steadfast support and to play a constructive role in addressing the North Korean nuclear issue and advancing lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. We agreed to work together toward these shared objectives. We also exchanged views on recent developments in the Middle East and agreed on the urgent need to restore peace and stability in the region, ensure the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and safeguard freedom of navigation. In addition, we reaffirmed our commitment to supporting efforts to restore peace in Ukraine and contribute to its reconstruction. Today's meeting was particularly meaningful because it enabled us to identify practical ways to protect our shared interests amid a rapidly changing international landscape and to deliver tangible outcomes that will benefit the peoples of the both sides. I hope to welcome Honorable President Costa and President von der Leyen to Korea in the near future, and I look forward to meeting them again on that occasion so that we can have in-depth talks next time in Seoul. Thank you once again for your warm hospitality on behalf of the people of the Republic of Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. This concludes the public statements after the summit. Please note that you can find a joint statement adopted by the leader.
There, we just watched the Korea-EU joint press conference. We recapped the joint statement with an expert here in Seoul. Welcome back, Professor Gorang. Now, if you have to pick one important key message from the summit, what would you say?
Oh, I would say very simply that I was quite surprised with European leaders being so bold on Russia, Ukraine, and even mentioning the North Korean soldiers fighting in Ukraine, as Ms. van der Leyen did, while on the opposite, when you listen to President Lee, this was very typical of his pragmatic diplomacy statement.
Like you mentioned.
Like we mentioned before, because he mentioned 4 policies. So it was all extremely concrete, so in the end, very shortly, he voiced his support to Ukraine, but without getting too far. The tone of both European leaders, Mr. Costa and Ms. van der Leyen, was quite
straightforward.
Straightforward, yeah. I was about to say belligerent, but yes, very straightforward. Yeah. While President Lee tried to keep it technical, concrete, and we can tell that Korea is trying to collaborate with Europe on mostly technical basis. It's extremely, extremely interesting because when you listen to these 3 statements, you can tell that Ms. van der Leyen and Mr. Costa were on the same page, while President Lee was trying to push into a different direction.
Because the 2 European leaders straightforwardly mentioned the North Korea-Ukraine issues, whereas President Jamal focused more on the cooperation in terms of economy or technology, right?
Definitely so. And even when you listen to the statement of Mr. Costa, when he mentioned our being like-minded, our being democratic, our being predictable as opposed to what leader? Who could that be, this unpredictable leader? So here, the tone of President Lee was very different. He tried not to expose himself. He mentioned 4 very concrete policies. And it looks like a very fruitful meeting from a Korean perspective. And it looks like whatever's happening on the European continent, I don't think Korea is going to get too involved.
I see. Well, we'll have to leave you here for tonight. Professor Gorang, thank you so much for making the time to be with us in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
And we also thank you for staying with us tonight. I'm Kim Dami. Thanks for watching.